Ah! Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends, enemies, and comrades, I hope you're doing well wherever you are. This is Keda Revolutionary for another quick session. I won't stay here for long because there's nothing much to explore. But since the news is newsing, as I predicted, ladies and gentlemen, Gachagua is back. Well, that's not what I predicted. Obviously, he went to the US and he's a Kenyan, so he was going to come back home, right? Yes. But like I said, the only way these members of opposition are going to create a buzz around their name is to do what? Is through all this political circus. I mean, it's not the like I said, it's designed by the political class to create this dichotomy, this two choice, binary choice between Ruto Raila faction versus Gachagua and the rest of them. I told you that yesterday. Remember? Remember I told you that? Yes, I told you that. All right. So, as I predicted, and again, I'll say this for the umpteenth time, okay? Gachagua, when he announced he was going to the US, I knew that on his comeback, they are going to choreograph a huge welcome party, okay? Something akin to what Kibaki did in 2007. Oh, sorry, it's 2002. And the same thing Raila did when, back in 2022 or whatever, 2017, when he ran out of, the script was kind of getting boring. He would go out of the country and come back and, tell Hassan Joho and Junet to gather some people waende wakamlaki huko kwa airport. So it's the same thing. Same thing with Matiangi. Remember when Matiangi came back from the US, okay? When he retired from the UN job, came back and they had a homecoming for him in Shabana FC Stadium. Same thing. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends and comrades, if this is your first time, ladies and gentlemen, take a moment and subscribe, share, like, comment, and do all the good stuff. If you like Kenyan news, Kenyan politics, and world politics as it relates to Kenya, go ahead and subscribe. And if you've already subscribed, you know the deal. The first order of business is to like the video. But again, the script is going as planned. I told you, Gachagua is back and is going to choreograph a huge welcome home party because what happened is this. Let me explain to you what happened. I know you guys want me to comment and talk about what actually transpired between the goons and all this stuff. That's not important to me, okay? I want you to look at what actually happens in the bigger picture. Okay, look at the bigger picture, not this shenanigans. Now, remember when Matiangi came back from US when he allegedly resigned from his World Bank job? I still doubt if this guy actually worked for World Bank, but okay, let's go with it. Okay, that's the story we're told. He quit his job as the World Bank, whatever, one of working for World Bank. I don't know in what capacity he was working for World Bank, but he came back, and his comeback, especially when he went to that stadium in Shabana, in Kisii, it made a huge news. It was national news, mainly because there were people. I mean, there was reports that people slept in Shabana Stadium the night before, and they were waiting. They were awaiting the great comeback, the speech from our son, the Shinkorokoro mwenyewe. This Labani Kariba. I see Labani saying there's no goons. This is the noise of a chicken after laying one egg. Yeah. But anyway, Karibu sana Labani. But anyway, like I was saying, if you remember, when Matiangi started all this, I'm not saying he started this whole idea of the welcome back stuff, but when he came back from his World Bank, whatever job in the US or whatever the case is, or South America, the news headlines, okay, thank you, Laban, Goosey Stadium. I always call it Shabana Stadium because I think that's the home of Shabana. Okay, so thank you for the correction, Laban. Yeah, when Matiangi came back, and went to that Goosey Stadium. Now that I'm corrected, thank you so much. Thanks to Laban. Sawa Labani. Aye. Okay, naelewa. So when he came back, all right, if I can only finish my point, Laban is on my bumper. So anyway, he's on my helmet. So what I was saying is this: of earlier this year, when Matiang'i came back from his World Bank job in overseas and came back, and they were going to hold a welcome back party for him at Goosey Stadium, Laban, Goosey Stadium. The news was about the enthusiasm from his supporters, okay, who were anticipating his speech, and it was reported that people camped, spent the night at Goosey Stadium. The night before, there were people being ferried from different parts coming in to wait for Matiang'i to address them. So on the day of that speech, you know, the Goosey Stadium was full to the brim. You know, there was people there, you know, shouting. They were enthusiastic to hear from. Oh, sorry, ooh, there's something in my ear, Poleni. They were enthusiastic about his return, and so you know, it made news, and people were like, okay, Matiang'i is the guy to actually lead the opposition. You know, that was after that, because it was a show of might, a support. He has he has the numbers. Basically, that's what they were trying to portray. And all the news headlines were, okay, Matiang'i will be the guy to, you know, take out Ruto, so to speak. So given that enthusiastic welcome back party or showing by the Abagusi community and similar supporters, you know, people started talking about Matiang'i being the next president, being a viable candidate to actually dethrone Ruto. But weeks after that, of course, there were his critics, and people like me and others reminded Kenyans why Matiang'i is not qualified to hold any public office given his murky history, his criminal history, okay? And once the news about his return dwindled, fizzled out, and the critics of Matiang'i became louder and louder and dominated the news space, mentioning his past, whether it's Rivayala, whether it's you know, Ruaraka land, whether it's you know, him just basically not giving two hits about human rights. You know, Matiang'i's name started, you know, he started looking weak. Then he went and had that 2-hour interview with Gituku, Sam Gituku, whatever his name is. And again, it wasn't his best performance in that interview. He actually, you know, looked not so presidential. He looked pissed off. He wasn't smiling. His answers were, he kind of looked like Sam was bothering him by asking those questions. He was very elusive in his questioning and his answers. And overall, it wasn't a good performance, okay? As he didn't look presidential, let me just say that, okay? And, you know, he was very dodgy when he was asked about the Rivayala and all this stuff. You know, it wasn't a good showing. It wasn't, let me just say that. And by that time, okay, at that point, already, you know, the damage was done, okay? There was nothing presidential about Matiang'i, okay? His name fizzled out, and the people talking, you know, the people who are saying that Matiang'i is Uhuru Kenyatta's project and all this stuff, you know. So after the buzz of his comeback and his welcome home party, and thousands or hundreds that showed up in Goosey Stadium, who were enthusiastically cheering him on while he gave his speech, the weeks following that really was met with criticism, okay? Which Matiang'i didn't take well, didn't answer well, and he couldn't quite recover. He was never seen, you know, the critics kind of had overshadowed the buzz that he had when he came back. You understand what I'm saying? So the opposition looked at this and said, you know what? of all this united opposition, whether it's Martha Karua, Matiang'i, or Gachagua, the other viable, candidate from this so-called united opposition was Gachagua, because Gachagua was vocal and he kept on talking about all this outlandish stuff about Ruto's, whether it's tribalism or tribalism or his criminal activities and his dealings with the Congolese, RSFK, and all this stuff. Okay, it was intriguing, it was interesting, it was capturing the news. Of course, the daily media will prop him up because he's the member of the political class, but nevertheless, these united opposition of Kenya, the only viable candidate alternative apart from Matiang'i, since Matiang'i's criticism, Matiang'i's negatives outweighed his positives, okay? After, a bunch of people criticized Matiang'i, kind of started digging into Matiang'i's past, and it overshadowed his welcome, his enthusiastic welcome by his supporters, okay? And the media caught up to it, because it's the social media space that actually kind of dictates how people view a certain candidate. And when the social media started talking and posting all the old Matiang'i clips, when he had Kiburi speaking about he doesn't care about human rights and all this stuff, it just painted him, and his interview did not help him, okay? So Matiang'i's name fizzled out. His fame was kind of tainted to a point where people did not see him as a viable candidate. In fact, people are looking at him as another version of Ruto, a Uhuru Kenyatta project, okay? So what was the alternative? The alternative was the noisemaker. Rigiji, man like Rigiji, Gachagua, okay? Because Gachagua was dropping all this info or allegations about Ruto doing this, and people kept on saying, oh, he's injecting. And every interview he was coming in, he was just trying to, outdo his previous interview, saying the more outlandish thing. Every interview he had something more outlandish to say. Ruto did this. Ruto killed whatever. Ruto sijui nini, aliba pesa. Ruto is. You understand what I'm saying? So he kept on going with that. So the united opposition looked at the candidates, among the candidates, whether it's Gachagua, Matiang'i, Martha Karua, what's his name? Kalonzo Musyoka, Eugene Wamalwa, who have the personality, a strong personality that can actually challenge Ruto. If you look at Matiang'i, yes, his personality is okay. I mean, he doesn't have a person. He looks like a pissed off headmaster, okay? So he's not appealing, so to speak. And like I said, his past does not bode well with majority of Kenyans, okay? So he failed on that part. Martha Karua, she has a personality of a doorknob, okay? This lady has no personality. She looks like a pissed off ex-girlfriend or whatever the case is. I mean, there's nothing appealing about Martha Karua. All she's known for is for defending Kibaki, which led to the post-election violence. So she's not really palatable to their electorate, okay? So, and her personality, nobody really takes Martha Karua serious. I mean, just 2 years ago, she was, supporting Raila Odinga. Now she's opposition. Like, I mean, come on now. Like, nobody takes her serious. No one looks at Martha Karua like she's a serious candidate. They look at her like somebody who just wants her name to stay relevant within the political, news cycle, okay? But she's not somebody who anyone can really take seriously, okay? So Kalonzo, we know him as a watermelon. Kalonzo is seen as a weak person. He doesn't have resolve. He doesn't have strong resolve. He doesn't stand for anything, okay? If the government does this and it's becoming, there's money to be spent there, Kalonzo will be bought. He will go to the other side. If the opposition is catching they are making a lot of noise, Kalonzo will be found in that side, okay? Since he was labeled a watermelon, he has never quite recovered, and majority of Kenyans don't look at him like a serious, strong individual with resolve who can actually stand up to Ruto and challenge Ruto, okay? So they are basically left with Rigiji, okay? Regarding Gachagua. Gachagua is, typical. He's more like a villager who, you know, he doesn't care. He's very blunt, uh, rough around the edges, uh, don't not very diplomatic in his means of communication, ways of communication. Um, he says what he thinks. Of course, he's, you know, he is what he is. Okay, he's very blunt and he's very loud, and you know, and he already Gachagua already what do you call it? He already did his homework. He already has his base, which he built by this whole claim of he's the champion of Mrima. Understand what I'm saying? So he has his base, the Mrima side, you know, the Kikuyus or the members of the Gema, who might not necessarily like the Kenyatas, who might not necessarily, you know, see as the Kenyatas as the elitist, okay? See the Kenyatas and Martha Karuas and Jimmy Wanjigis as the elites within the Kikuyu the nation, okay, Mlima Mount Kenya nation. They look at Gachagua as the alternative. This guy is a villager. He's kind of down to earth. He's not. His English is what it is, basic English. He expresses himself in whatever way he wants. You know, he can. You know, so they can kind of relate. He looks like someone who can, you know, a regular folk. Okay, he's not from the, you know, the elitists like the Kenyatas or a career politician like Martha Karua or, you know, somebody with shady past like Matiangi, you know, and, you know, not a weakling like Kalonzo, right, or Eugene Wamalwa. So they looked at that and they say, okay, let's prop up this Gachagua guy because he has the personality. He was the deputy president. You know, already he's pissed off for the fact that he was, you know, he was removed unconstitutionally. So we can work with that. We can try work something out with this guy. Okay. So how could they kind of raise up, market Gachagua, or make his name ring bells within every corner of Kenya? You have to create some kind of event that will make Gachagua look like a hero, okay? Look like this triumphant king returning back to Kenya. So, okay, they engineered this whole visit to the US, and he went to the US, and he said what he said about Al-Shabaab, how he will help the US investigate Ruto's regime, administration, connection with the RSF in Sudan, and all sort of nonsense that he was saying while he was in the US, okay? And this grabbed the news in Kenya. Like I say, the news cycle, the Githeri media, they do not have anything better to do. These guys do not ask the right questions. Not the right questions, but the questions that the people, the public would like to know. They're not acting in the public interest. They're acting to entertain and to paint a certain narrative that the political elites in Kenya, oligarchs, want. That's the whole point of this Githeri media, Standard, KTN, Citizen TV, and all this stuff, all right? Okay? Majority of the time, they are forced to kind of go with what the social media is driving, because majority of Gen Zs and Kenyans in general express themselves through the social media. So sometimes these Githeri media are forced to actually, you know, go to social media to actually gauge what the people are saying. So here's what's happening. So after, you know, doing their, you know, looking around in this united opposition people, there was no one who had that quality, that personality that can actually stand up and make a name for himself and stand, you know, against Ruto. I'm just giving you this, okay? So they conjured up this, they came up with this visit. Gachagua went to US for a month or two or whatever the case. Then they kind of drummed up, like I say, they were going to choreograph this whole huge welcome home party. They were going to kumlaki hapo airport JKIA, and he will walk around. I mean, they'll escort him to whatever the case, Kamgunji, and he will give a fiery speech, a defiant speech, you know, addressing his faithful, telling them, assuring them that there's nothing to fear. I'm not scared of Ruto. I am the guy to take out Ruto. That's basically what he's saying. And to confirm to you that Gachagua is going to run in 2027 as the main opposition, he said that when he was in the US, he said, I don't care about the courts. I don't care about what might happen. I will be in the ballot. He gave the example of Waluke. He said Waluke has been murdering people, doing whatever the case is, stealing money. He was in prison. He won, and they didn't do anything about it. So I'm going to run for presidency, and nothing will stop me. And it's kind of right. Under this corrupt political system, you can do whatever you want. I mean, Babu Owino shot somebody on camera, and he's still running for governor, gubernatorial seat. He's still an MP. He even became a lawyer. I mean, the jokes is on us, ladies and gentlemen. But that's besides the point. So what I'm trying to say is this. So after they looked and they realized that Matiang'i was never the face of the opposition because of his checkered past, they went with Gachagua, okay? So they know that Gachagua, Gachagua might be a tough sell because already there's this murmurs from a certain quarters that are, saying that, we just had a Kikuyu president. These Kikuyus, they feel like if they're not in power, they have to demonize whoever is in power, the helm, okay? So already he's disadvantaged because of that, okay? People are looking at it. It's easy to basically classify him or reduce him to a parochial leader, Kikuyu leader, whatever the case is. And it doesn't help because all he talks about is mlima, 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 mlima. But to his credit, mlima, 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 that talk actually helped him develop and strengthen his base, which is Mount Kenya. Okay, he's strengthened and he has his voting bloc, which is Mlima. Okay, so in that sense, yes, it played to his advantage. Now, the problem is now, or the challenge for him is to actually come out and, position himself or market himself as the national leader who can lead the nation. And that's where the challenge is, because he has done so much for the Mount Kenya talk, all this talk about Mlima, the economy of Kenya is nothing without the Mlima and all this, which kind of alienated a lot of people. Okay? So it will only be the people of Gema and whoever is going to align himself with Gachagua, okay? With that kind of Gachagua, because they're looking at Gachagua as the parochial leader. So anyway, so Gachagua goes to the US, makes some outlandish claims, okay, which grabs headlines. Then there was all this talk about he's going to be arrested when he comes back. That was basically to build up the anticipation in Kenya of his return, to make it more viewable, to make people to pay attention to Gachagua, okay? That was nothing more than that, because Gachagua, in real sense, he hasn't done anything, he hasn't broken the law. Okay, he made some outlandish statements about the president, which he should substantiate. He should go and substantiate, whether he goes to the, I don't know, DCI, whoever, courts, whatever the case is, Senate, they should inquire more, because if a former deputy president makes some outlandish, startling allegations against a sitting president, talking about he's doing business with a known terrorist organization, money laundering, and all sort of stuff, the Senate should actually, bring him to answer some questions about what he said and substantiate what he's saying, okay? But again, I told you this, the political class are building up Gachagua, because like I told you, the end game is to present you with two choices: Gachagua, who represent the united opposition, versus Ruto and Raila. That's the choice you have, okay? Now, so Gachagua goes to the US, he makes those outlandish and now the Malala and his cohorts and all these DCP busybodies, they keep on making these TikToks, videos, and they go to Fix the Nation and all this Githeri media, which is giving them time. I don't know why, but it's Githeri media. They're owned by the very political class, okay? So they give these nitwits time. So the Malalas, make the rounds, goes to, Citizen TV, Fix the Nation, or whatever, talking about, oh, we've had news about goons, we've had news about Murkomen, the possibility of arresting Gachagua, and it is meant to build up the anticipation so that you can pay close attention to the fiasco that is Gachagua's return, okay? Because the image that they want to put in your mind is, hey, look at the heroic comeback. This defiant Gachagua, mtu wa ukweli, the truthful man, DCP mwenyewe, coming back in defiantly, not scared of arrest. He's marching along with his supporters, and he's not scared of being arrested, despite the presence of the GSU and the police forces and the goons. Here he is, he's marching down with his supporters behind him, and he doesn't care about these threats of being arrested. He's coming back, he's the Njamba, as they say, right? That's the whole point. It's a psychological thing that is being run on you because you're not paying attention. Unfortunately, majority of Kenyans will not catch up to this because this is part of building up Gachagua. They're building up Gachagua as the next opposition leader. Remember, they want you to have a binary choice. Ruto versus somebody. Like I said, Matiang'i failed the test. So they had to go with Gachagua. Okay? So Gachagua is the face now. They want to make him, the media is making him the face of the opposition. He has some followers. Personally, I don't think Gachagua is that popular across the nation, but he has his followers within Central Province. Let me just use the provinces because I'm old. I don't know about this this Ugatuzi constitution and devolution. Okay, so here he is. Gachagua comes back, and you saw the welcoming back party or whatever that video I'm lucky when he was walking down the stairs from JKIA. It kind of reminded me of the image of Raila Odinga going to somebody's funeral. I mean, they're pushing each other, shoving each other. Gachagua in his cowboy hat. Okay, I mean, that's how we conduct our politics. Unfortunately, that's how we conduct our politics. Chaos like that when ukona mabouncer and you have supporters and they're cheering on and they're pushing and shoving each other. It's like that's what's viewed as bravado, you have balls, look at you, you're coming back. So that's the image. That's basically the narrative. That's the image that they want to actually put out there so you can buy into it psychologically. So they learned, okay? Listen to me very carefully. Listen to me because I don't want you to miss this point. They learned about this when Matiang'i came back and had that meeting at Gusii Stadium, and it had a national buzz. Matiang'i was trending because of that big meeting, okay? So they learned about that. They were like, oh, okay. But unfortunately for Matiang'i, he couldn't keep up the buzz because his critics walianza kudig in his history, and in the social media space, his history overshadowed the buzz of concerning his welcome back party. Okay, and that's how he kind of fizzled out, and now he's not being looked at as a viable candidate who can stand and dethrone Ruto. Now they're in the process of building Gachagua, and there'll be more choreographed events that's coming. There'll be Gachagua going to the DCI, Gachagua's home being surrounded by police, Gachagua asked to go to court, Gachagua, there'll be that. There'll be Gachagua giving press conferences, there'll be Gachagua giving interviews, there'll be Gachagua having a Kamkunji rally, there'll be that, and there'll be tear gas. And these are things that have already been scripted that are going to come, you will see in the next several weeks. Okay? You'll hear Murkomen. Murkomen is about to have a meeting in Nyeri about Usalama, Jukwaa la Usalama, and all that nonsense. Murkomen is a pinhead. He doesn't know what's going on. Murkomen is the most incompetent, number one incompetent CS in Kenya's history. This man came out yesterday and said he's going to be the next Michuki. I mean, who compares themselves with Michuki of all people? But that's besides the point. What I'm trying to say is this, okay? There are going to be a lot of events out there that are designed to portray Gachagua as this defiant member of opposition, the new Raila Odinga. You understand what I'm saying? That's the whole point, because they want to build him up to 2027. Then 2027, of course, he will lose. He will lose. But the perception will be, because the perception is already set, the perception will be Gachagua amenyang'anywa kura. Ruto has stolen the election. That's why they've set the Ninio by now. Already they're telling you, Oscar Sudi, the lady from Garissa, whatever the case is, was telling you, kura kama ikutosha, we'll find some kura na tutajaza. What are they telling you? They are preparing you in the future. So mkifika 2027, for those of you who are still want to go to vote, which is okay, go vote. It's your universal suffrage, okay? Mukishapiga kura, Ruto will be declared president, and you guys will be pissed off saying Gachagua won. Now, you'll go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will stand with the IEBC decision that Ruto won fair and square, okay? But then, after that, there'll be chaos and all this nonsense, and there'll be all this NADCO, whatever talks. But again, by that time, Gachagua will still be looked at as the person who is going to take over, the most popular politician approaching 2032. He'll be the main guy. You understand? Just like 2017, okay? After 2013, of course, Raila was the main opposition. But leading up to 2017, people felt like, okay, waliiba ile mwaka iliyopita, but Raila is the main guy who is going to do what? To win the next election, because aliibiwa, but he has the majority of the supporters are with him. Kwa ground ni yeye. He's the chosen one. You understand what I'm saying? That's how they're playing this. So that is what is going to happen. So Ruto will win in 2027, okay? And 2032, Ruto will not be legible to run. Constitutionally, he's not. Okay? So Gachagua will be the leading candidate as far as the opinion polls and the ground, because he's the now heavyweight. He's the now biggest Ninio. So whoever the Ruto Raila faction will prop up as the candidate will be defeated in 2032, and Gachagua will be the president of the Republic of Kenya in 2032. That's why I usually get you back to this clip that I told you of Uhuru Kenyatta. He gave when he was drunk, and he stopped himself because he was giving out the plan. He said, kumi yangu, kumi ya Ruto, alafu kumi ya Gacha, then he stopped himself. And this was way back, the TNA days, Jubilee days. We didn't even know who Gachagua was, okay? He was super drunk that day, addressing the people of Mount Kenya. He was like, kumi yangu, kumi ya Ruto, alafu kumi ya Gacha, then he stopped himself. Then he started speaking, he started laughing, and akaanza kuaddress watu na kwa Kikuyu. So what I'm trying to tell you is this: they already planned this. This is a game. Like I told you before, if this was real, take an example of Miguna, a person who vehemently opposes and publicly opposes the regime of the day and the political class will not survive in this ninio. Angesha fungwa, they would have made up some trumped up charges. Wangemwacha kae huko nje ya Kenya. They would have done everything to muzzle him. They will not be giving him this attention. But the reason why he's getting all this attention and they're pushing on with anything that he says, whether it's high cousins, one time, they're making it go viral, okay? Because they're promoting Gachagua as the next one to take over from Ruto. So while you guys are getting excited about his comeback and all this stuff, look at the big picture, okay? This is a planned process. They're just acting. But the transition of power has already been organized. You are caught up in the drama and your emotions. Namtawana in the midst of this. They don't care if you lose your life. These people don't care if you lose if you lose your life. As long as they maintain that power within this pool of individuals who make up part of the corrupt political Kenyan oligarchy. That's how they're running this business. So all this Gachagua coming back from US, Gachagua is going to the DCI, Gachagua's compound has been surrounded by police officers, it has been tear gas, his rallies are being tear gas, the head of DCP has been arrested, Nani have been arrested. It's all choreographed nonsense to entertain you. I told you what Nani said. Cole said, Hollywood is for beautiful actors. Politics is for ugly actors. Isn't vipindre, as they say it. Mchezo wa town. But anyway, that's the point I wanted to make about this Gachagua whole thing. I'm not too invested in it, but I'm just watching because that's what everybody's talking about. So I'm just looking at it as I see how their plan is unveiling and they're implementing it step by step, while majority of Kenyans are falling for the entertainment, the dramatic part of it is what you guys are falling for. And you spend a lot of time talking about this and that and that and that, while you don't see the big picture, what is really happening behind the scenes. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends, and comrades, my name is Kenya Revolutionary. Subscribe, share, comment, and do all the good stuff. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace and blessings.